Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit of background. I'm Cindy Mikey, and I lead the industry solutions team at Cloudera, and also responsible for the insurance industry. Legacy Hortonworks, and also my background. I've been in the insurance industry for a number of years prior to joining Hortonworks. Former CFO, worked for a couple of different insurance carriers. Worked for the industry standards body, and done a few other things in my career. So just going around the room, how many people in here actually work in the insurance industry? Okay, good. How many people are on kind of like the data science area? Okay. How many people have ever worked in the insurance side of business, or the business side of insurance? Okay, I may get into some concepts that as you go back to your organization, so like I said, my background's accounting and finance, and very passionate about data. I've also worked in claims and underwriting, also have done some things around the SIU area. I belong to a group around the Coalition for Insurance Fraud. It's a global organization, so looking for different types of patterns and so forth. So the topics I'm going to really talk about is what's going on in the insurance industry today as it changes to the connected world, the digital era. What's that impact to the insurance industry, and how can we leverage data differently? And also analytics, and also where AI is coming into play. Because as I look at the industry, and I'll tell you, when I first started with Legacy Hortonworks, they said, oh, we can enable predictive analytics. And I go, sorry, the insurance industry, that's what we're built on. So don't tell me you're going to do predictive analytics, because we've been doing that for hundreds of years. Just maybe not with the same types of tools that we have the opportunity to do now. So things have definitely evolved. So on that, really talk about where we're at as an industry, what's going on with the change in the, the area of risk, the area of claims, what we're seeing, the new types of data sources. Go through some example use cases, and also I'm going to share with you some of the, if you're passionate about the insurance industry, what's going on with InsurTech. There's a few sites that I like to continue to watch and monitor that are good sources to look at, and then leave it open for some Q&A. So as we look at, we talk about the connected world, I think what's interesting is some of the statistics projected to be over 1 trillion devices by 2025. As we look at the impact to the insurance industry and the usage of autonomous vehicles, we're looking to have maybe 25% of the number of vehicles on the road be autonomous vehicles by 2030. And that projection is to be 10% up over the prior 4 years. The other aspect is, as we look at smart technology, what does that actually mean in the nature of risk and underwriting? What does that mean to people's well-being? How can we leverage this type of information to better protect? So as an industry, we always talk about, you say we're here to pay losses, but how do we make that shift to actually be more preventive and actually change and think about what we do as an industry? So rather than just, hey, we're going to pay claims, how can I actually make you safer? And that's what I'm seeing going on in the industry right now. We're in that kind of that cusp of change. The other aspect is when we look at commercial insurance, what's going on from the nature of connected cities, connected properties, connected technologies, and the cyber risk. Cyber risk insurance is the largest growing type and product of insurance next to pet insurance. And some of you are going, pet insurance. When you think about where we are as society, pets are becoming very, very important. Very, very small market, but the growth and the percentage makes it the second largest growing. I just kind of like those little anecdotes. The other aspect is, as insurance companies, and as we look at the connected world, we think about different types of commercial insurance for commercial auto, or we think about personal insurance. We also want to say, connected cars, autonomous vehicles actually are to make the road safer. But the other thing that they've done is when one of those vehicles is typically involved in an accident, it now becomes a total loss. So rather than having an increase in rather than being a line of business where you have a high frequency and low risk, it's the inverse. We now have the frequency and severity has reversed. So I may have fewer accidents, but when that car is involved in an accident, I can't take it to your traditional auto body repair shop to repair it anymore. It's too expensive. So we're having to actually create those as a total loss. So we have to think about what those types of things are doing to our underwriting, our pricing, and our rating. The other aspect is the nature of insurance risk and how we look at everything is fundamentally shifting. And a couple other statistics I want to put out there is we all know, as if you're not involved in the insurance industry, but us as an individual, typically the touch point that we have with our insurance company is the claim handling process. And as we look at the new types of data sources that we can use for claims handling, it can have a significant impact to us as an industry to actually increase customer satisfaction. Because most insurance companies will lose a customer because of a bad claim experience. The other aspect that I see, and if anyone was in the women's luncheon, the panelists from AXA had a great comment on this, and it kind of backs up with also what McKinsey's is saying, is as we look at where we are as a society and as a world and the way data is really impacting us over the next probably 5 years, McKinsey is saying that over 30% of the world's revenue will come from refined or new revenue models versus our traditional, all of that backed up by data. So as we look at, and I've talked a little bit about the change in the risk, but some of the major topics here is, we have to think about the insurance risk and insurance customer. And the customer, we can think about that in the context of both customers as a business for commercial insurance or as individual insurance. So as an industry, we've always been very policy-centric. We don't typically think about being customer-centric. So how do we actually now take traditional systems and convert them into being more customer-centric? So we have to look at new data sources. We've been known to do all types of data modeling in the industry, but how do we think about bringing in social listening? We have to look at lifestyles. We have to look at risk-based needs. We also need to look at digital interaction. So how do we work, maybe from a robo-advisor leveraging some type of machine learning? How do we manage our interactions with agents or producers? The other aspect is looking at, from a health insurance and a life insurance perspective, is there a point in time when we start to truly leverage wearable technology, looking at gamification to get customers engaged? How many people in the room have bought a life insurance product in the last 5 years? Not too many. It's an industry that fundamentally has to rethink how we engage and to understand, why do you need a life insurance policy? So how do you actually look at how you interact? And there's some things that are going on in the Asia region around life insurance that I think the rest of the world, from an insurance industry perspective, could really learn about. How do you change your products to meet lifestyle needs as opposed to you need a life insurance policy? Because you typically think about a life insurance policy when you have children, you get married, you have some type of major life event. But wouldn't it be nice to say, you know what, I only go skiing maybe once every 2 years. So why do you rate me as being somebody that's, I like to ski? So why do I have a higher premium just because I ski once every 2 years? What if you could actually buy a life insurance policy or some type of accident policy that I'm getting ready to go on a ski vacation, I want to actually buy that policy. I want to be insured and governed, or have coverage from this amount of time. So we have to think about those types of things as an industry. The other aspect is, I mentioned before, just automotive claims, the change in frequency and severity. And the other aspect is, how do we look at environmental data and looking at that more in a real-time perspective and not think about just historical CAT models. We have to think about, the world's weather events and what does that mean. as I mentioned, the insurance industry, we've been using statistical analysis for, I go back to, my days 35 years ago going, how do I lie with statistics in order to make my models look correct, or making sure I've got the right type of anomalies. So in the past, we're still kind of looking at text mining. We've been very good at rules engines, doing some process mining, using some expert systems. But as an industry, with the new types of data, we really have to start to embrace additional things around natural language processing. How do I look at artificial neural networks? So by looking at graph databases, and actually giving me some of the correlations. And I'm a firm believer from an AI perspective, not everything is going to be a model. Because working in claims and underwriting, sometimes I just need to give someone a visualization of some events, and that may not actually turn into a predictive model, but I just maybe need to illustrate information and data differently, and we can do that from a network analysis. The other aspect, how many of you have a homeowner's policy or a renter's insurance policy? Do you keep an inventory of your home assets? So as the industry, and if you ever have a claim, it's horrible to fill out a claim. So as an industry, we're starting to see trends where I can basically walk around my house, take an inventory with my phone, and through machine learning and AI, I can now actually start to recognize what those things are and actually create that inventory and make it much easier. So we're looking at those types of techniques. And that's where I get very passionate about what we can do from an ML and AI perspective in the insurance industry, because we'll be the industry that has probably the most amount of digital assets that we can use. The other aspect is, leveraging, speech recognition. So one of the things that I like to think about is let's start to think about the new types of data sources that we have, those things that are more real-time, more streaming, that if we're going to become an industry that is talking about preventive analytics, we have to be able to do things that allow us to do the real-time data sources. I can stream it. I can look at driver behavior. I can look at weather events. So say, for instance, if you get into your car and we have telematics providers and we all say, oh, this is cool stuff, it's going to help me lower my premiums and so forth. But no, you want to make that driver safer. So what are the things that you can do to look at real-time information that as you're driving to work, or if you're in a can't say in a shared vehicle quite yet with that, but I get in the car. I typically drive this route to work every day, but there's actually an accident on that highway today. So if you're actually taking and thinking about the autonomous vehicle or even a connected vehicle, you put in your destination. It knows your driving behavior. It knows the weather conditions. What's the safest route for you to go today? And if you're actually paying for your insurance policy on a per usage basis, there's so much that we have to do from a digital interaction perspective around AI and ML in order to make those things safer for the world. So lots of different data sources from risk and underwriting analysis all the way to cyber risk insurance. So one of the things that I like to do is, as I'm working with insurance companies, is to help them start to think about their data differently. And as an industry, I'd say 15% of our data is structured data. Those things that typically are in our enterprise data warehouses, but it's the information that sits in content management systems. It's information that sits in, external data sources. So you think about social media, your drone images, your weather and climate. And think about, as you start to look at, business value, is what data can I use today that I'm not using today, and how am I going to leverage that? But also start to plan your data sources. Think about where I might get that from, and it may be a data source that, I just want to, listen to it. I want to monitor certain types of items. But from a business perspective, we need to start thinking about what data can I use, and from an IT perspective, start to plan for, what shape and variety and velocity does that come in. So some example use cases, and this is where, if I look across the different companies that I'm working with and also those that I follow, there's opportunity for, additional methods of advanced analytics and AI, whether it's coming from pricing, if it's coming from underwriting, claims, your sales and marketing activity. From a claims perspective, some of the top areas are doing photo recognition. How do we actually do a digital loss impact? So if you're actually taking photos, and one of the things that's, as we start to think about photo imagery and so forth, is how does fraud get involved in that? Because many times people, if they have the opportunity to just upload it, believe it or not, guys, a couple of insurance companies have found about 20% of their fraud cases are coming from digitally enhanced photos. So how do I also start to think about the metadata that is behind a photo, and also substantiate where that photo was taken, when it was taken, and so forth. So those are the new use cases that we have to be aware of, that we can use ML and AI techniques. The other aspect is, from an underwriting perspective, is how can we actually look at risk scoring, risk monitoring, looking at loss control, looking at potential areas of premium fraud. And for those of you that are not familiar with premium fraud, it's basically how do I identify whether it's both a commercial policy or an individual policy where somebody's actually lied about, or maybe not lied, but not as truthful as they should have been on their application. So there's organizations that I've been able to work with that rather than actually doing let's fill out your form or your insurance application, is what are the data sources, especially in the personal insurance, and you can do it in commercial, is what are the data sources that I already have about you, or I can source from other organizations, and then have you actually validate. And I'll give you an example of a InsurTech in the U.S. called MetroMile. MetroMile, when you get online, you say, I want to purchase insurance, you put in 3 pieces of information, all the rest of the information comes back. It's coming from third-party data about you. You can do that in some countries. You can't do that in all countries. But if you also say, let me actually validate that information and then actually go ahead and use that. So those are techniques of saying, rather than taking 15 minutes to actually fill out an application. I don't know what insurance application typically takes less than 15 minutes, but if I can shorten that time, it can have a major impact. And those are different types of analytics. What type of data sources can I use? Can I use additional type of predictive models? And given that I was a former CFO, I'm very much into value trees and profitability. So I'll go through a couple examples on employing areas where we have been able to use machine learning and AI for additional kind of non-traditional type of predictive models. So say, for instance, this was actually, and this value tree kind of like looks at, a lot of insurance companies are trying to improve their underwriting and their risk selections. Well, you can typically do that in 2 fashions. You can look at either increasing your premium, or you can reduce your underwriting expenses, because we all know that we want profitable growth. So risk selection is a key component. Some of the value drivers and levers are, how do you better understand your risk profile? How do you actually provide customized premiums? Can you increase customer satisfaction? In the underwriting area, can you actually, reduce your risk, reduce premium leakage? So kind of some just common levers. And I'm actually going to go into a use case about application funnel analysis. I know, doesn't that sound fun for an after lunch discussion? So, and this is actually something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've worked with a couple of companies on the commercial insurance. One of the things that you want to be able to do is, as you're looking at your book of business, a lot of times insurance companies have quite a few different types of documents that are coming in, especially in the commercial insurance, and this is coming out of commercial insurance, is what applications do I actually want to work on? What's the worthiness of this application? Because you can think about a commercial insurance is almost like when you go and get a mortgage. It's about all different types of documents that are maybe having to be submitted. But you want to actually say which ones are within my risk appetite. This one looks like it's something that I really want to be able to quote, and if I quote it, I really want to win that business. So everybody's competing in lots of areas of commercial insurance. So a lot of companies will start to say, I'm trying to do some new advanced analytics. So one area that I will talk to people about is, well, what's your underwriting expense? And this particular example, this insurance company, their underwriting expense was 43%. And if you look at the kind of like financial ratios within an insurance company, 43% for underwriting expense for any line of business, knowing that you're probably going to lose in losses 60 to 80%, and you have 43%, you're going, okay, why should we be in business? So the first use case for them was, how do I drive dollars out of underwriting expense? So one of the things that you can start to do is just use some traditional analytics. What percentage of your applications do you actually quote and issue an insurance policy on? What percentage are you quoting and losing? The other aspect is, what are those that you are not quoting? But the challenge is many times people will go ahead and actually review and underwrite the application and then decide not to quote it. And one of the areas of opportunity is on those last thing that you want to do is down in the lower right-hand corner is actually assess an application and then decline it. This insurance company, while they had 43% underwriting, 90% of their dollars were being spent on assess and decline. So huge opportunity. So you sit there and say, so how do we go about thinking about these areas? So think about, what unstructured data could I actually have access to use? So if I've got attachments, I have photos, and are there new data sources that I could be using? Could I be using better real-time information? And then the aspect that you want to do is be able to think about using predictive analytics and ML and AI in the funnel process. So you've got new applications. I want to be able to look at those new applications in the aspect of the risk quality. And then I also want to look at the ability as, what's the propensity of this piece of business that I can actually quote and bind it. So new areas of thinking about some predictive models that can be used. Other aspects is to look at doing risk similarity and risk profiling, doing related entity analysis. So I'll give you an example of one of the lines of businesses I love to talk about is director and officer insurance. And director and officer, somebody's chuckling, it's like, I love this area. So you think about CEOs. Who are your CEOs? Who are your board of directors? Who are they all connected with? And you want to say, what's the relationships of individuals? So one of the things that we can actually do is pull in different data sources from different organizations, actually do neural network analysis, who's connected with who, and actually provide that type of visualization back to the underwriter so they can make better decisions. The other aspect is looking at fraud, looking at financial blemishes. So some areas of opportunity for different types of analytics that maybe what we've used traditionally. Another area that's from a claims perspective is, how can we actually have an impact to loss payouts? Lots of different levers. I think there's many opportunities for insurance companies to be more profitable by looking at, one, satisfaction. How do we look at large losses and claim severity? Looking at frequency and volatility of our pricing. How do you reduce leakage and fraud? Improve reserving accuracy, or looking at missed opportunities where some other insurance company could have paid. And here I'm actually going to talk and look a little bit at the digital aspect, the different data sources, and the future of where I see claims going, and then also give you an example of some deep learning activity. So the area where we have opportunity, I believe, in a customer journey leveraging AI is, if you look at the claims life cycle, we've got, how can I actually help prevent a claim from happening? So, many times everybody's going, okay, let's have a connected home, connected car, connected life type program. And you have to stop and think, why are you employing potentially IoT-based services in the insurance industry, because it can be a cost to an insurance company. Anyone in the room use a telematics device to lower their insurance premium? Okay. Before, when we just used to use dongles, those dongles cost $300 US, and whatever that would be in euros, a little over 200. And the average profit on an automotive insurance policy is more than that in any given year. So why would I want to, as an insurance company, actually pay for those types of devices? Same way for other things. So we have to be smart when we say, hey, I'm going to do IoT for IoT's sakes. It's why we have to start to think about, if I actually use IoT-based sensors in the insurance industry, where should I actually be deploying them? So doing some causal analysis. So why did a claim actually happen? Then let's determine, do we deploy IoT-based services, in some type of, monitoring process that we do. So one, I like to, stop and think about that. The other aspect is, from a digital claim perspective, is how do I actually, maybe give the driver a safer route to work, or a safer, a route to take children to school. The other aspect is, can you use potential, biometric information to authenticate at the time of an accident? Was this actually the person that was involved? We're starting to see this in a few countries where there's digital photos when you're actually filing the claim handling process, actually having a digital interaction with the claims agent, so to actually speed up the claims handling process. A lot of these are in your and my type of personal insurance, not so much yet in commercial insurance, but definitely in personal lines insurance. And then also, can I use possibly, chatbots or text-based, interesting, and I'll get on this in another, but chatbots to actually do like first notice of loss. So if I could actually do a chatting type thing as opposed to, let me get on the phone, and sometimes people want to get on the phone and still handle, that personal one-on-one type of interaction. But how do I leverage that chatbot information? Or the aspect, if I'm doing a phone call, how does the person sound? Do they sound stressed? So there's certain things from a fraud perspective that you listen for people's tone of voice. So start to think about, historically, how could I use speech recognition, voice recognition type capabilities to help substantiate claims? And I know now you're all going to hey, really hate the insurance company because she just talked about all this AI technology that's going to make my claim handling process horrible. But I think these are areas where we really need to take into consideration. The other aspect is, how can we, leverage AI to make sure that if a claim does happen, how do we have the best optimal, case management? The other aspect is, can we leverage AI techniques that at the point of time that maybe you send in that photo of your automotive accident, what is the amount of the claim? Can I actually settle that claim by, rather than sending an adjuster out to look at it, going to an auto body repair shop? But if I can substantiate that that was a valid claim, a valid accident supported by whatever, methods that I have, what if I could actually deposit, the amount of your claim into your checking account or whatever your choice is at that point of time, maybe within 24 hours of a claim or less than that? As we look at the new data sources, these things are becoming more and more reality. So this is where AI-based techniques can actually help us. This is actually an insurance company that I had the opportunity to work with after Hurricane Harvey, which was in 2017 in Houston, Texas. They were actually leveraging both digital, satellite imagery, GPS-type location, water levels, helicopters, data sources from the state and local governments to actually, twofold. One was to help them get out their loss estimates as a result of Hurricane Harvey, to actually say, here's going to be the impact, to our surplus. Can we continue to write? The other aspect is by doing certain type of cluster analysis and looking at, water level, surge levels, could I go ahead and I know one of my, through an aerial imagery, I know some of my policyholders were impacted. So rather than, going through a long, elongated claims handling process, they just actually wrote checks to their insureds based upon their premium or based upon their policy values. So that's how you actually increase customer satisfaction. So there's a lot of new types of data sources that we can leverage better. We've seen, these types of data sources being used in, CAT modeling, for a number of years now. But I think to actually see those same type of AI methods used in actual claims handling process, within an insurance company, that's a huge area of opportunity. Just a couple more slides here. As we look at, go ahead and build this out. What we're trying to do from an industry perspective is to be able to ingest any type of data, whether it's, our traditional, transactional systems, to real-time scoring engines, to looking at connected channels, connected ecosystems, to be able to store, process. So you think about the concept of where's this used from a data lake perspective, but be able to do more real-time data discovery, enhance your business intelligence, be able to, monitor. But the most important thing, an opportunity, I believe, for the industry is how do I actually go from, a reactive industry to a more proactive, real-time organization. And I think this is going to be, in my opinion, one of the areas that I hope to see in my lifetime, that we actually are more preventive than predictive. And I mentioned a few of those data sources that I do like to follow. And one thing that actually said, how much, if we look at, cognitive and artificial intelligence across the world, a significant increase in the next couple of years as far as the amount of services or dollars being spent on AI-related projects in the insurance industry. 3 data sources that I like to follow. InsurTech Hub, if you're very interested in InsurTech, there's, over probably $4 billion a year just being spent on just InsurTech investments, and most of those investments are around digital. The Digital Insurer is a website that I follow. It's based out of Singapore. Very interesting use cases of what's going on in the world. And for those of you, Insurance Thought Leadership is another organization where there's about 60,000, people from the insurance industry that will do different types of thought leadership that's going on, different ways of thinking about the insurance industry, points of view, and I just find them to have some very interesting articles. My fundamental belief is I think we've got a huge opportunity for the insurance industry to leverage data differently, and to leverage unstructured and real-time data for the industry. And I see pockets of innovation going on in the industry. And believe it or not, I'm actually seeing quite a bit of uptake in the life insurance industry around digital. So, and one last thing before I go to some Q&A is, one of the challenges, we all talk about people, process, and technology. I think we definitely have the capability areas that we need. But one thing I think that's maybe overlooked sometimes is culture. Is can we actually, as an industry, but then also within our companies, embrace and think about, AI as not a method of, hey, I'm going to lose my job, or it's going to displace people, but actually how do I augment how they do work, and actually become more effective at elements. I personally believe insurance, enjoy it. I think there's 3 types of insurance company. I refer to it as legalized gambling. There's those that play roulette. There's those that count cards. And to me, that's an insurance company that's very good at data and analytics, or there's those that just play craps. And I think there's a lot in the industry that are still crap players. And so culture is how we get people to become more insight-driven and also leveraging data differently. So on that, any questions? Dialogue? Okay, well, thank you. I'll give you guys a little bit of time back, and thank you for spending time with me this afternoon.